Hey, Daz, great to have you for our class this week. We're going to be talking about the lab report, which is assignment 3 in the Haoda Lifestyle Nutrition course in the diploma and year 1 of our bachelor's in sport and exercise science. So great to have you on board. You're the owner, author, and an absolute god of this course. So you're going to walk us through. Before we get started, Daz, what's the importance? If you had to summarize, and you're talking to new students, what's the importance of this course? Why is it so important for our diploma students and our year 1 students to take this course?
Yeah, cool. Yeah, thanks, Fran. And hi everyone. So the ultimately the importance of this course. Okay, so New Zealand's in a state of constant health concerns and problems. Okay, and New Zealand rates high in the majority of health statistics in the wrong sense. Okay, we're like third highest in the world through obesity. We one of the highest in the world for diabetes and heart disease. We number 1 in teenage suicides in the world. And the statistics go on, and just completely go on. Well, the whole idea of Heoranga Hauora is looking at someone holistically in a holistic sense to be able to say, so we can make an assessment, we can do some values, we can kind of support people through change, through a range of behavioral changes that are kind of steering them in towards pathways that are, if we put it in one sense, self-destructive. Okay, so we're looking at Heoranga Hauora being a holistic sense of someone's well-being through physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and social. Right. So if we can look and understand people in their holistic sense and well-being, then we can hopefully have more idea what's going on, and we can also make changes to our life, because what we know from that first assignment that you would have done is that with behavioral changes, that what happens in one pillar of someone's well-being, like for example, if I stop going to the gym and I start putting on weight, then that can also affect not just my tinana, but also my mental, emotional well-being. Also lose motivation and drive, so therefore it can affect my spiritual well-being and my belief in myself, and it can also affect my social well-being, because I end up just not wanting to go out like I would if I was up and vibrant and all physical and physically strong and stuff like that. So it could have repercussions over a long period of time. Now, this may not happen immediately. This might happen over a 10, 20, 30-year gap, right? But
Right.
What we're looking at doing, we're looking at addressing people's well-being now, so then in the future they can look after themselves, because we know that diabetes doesn't start overnight. Diabetes starts from a series of personal events that happen over a lifetime.
Yeah, but I think, for example, this year, especially with the extended restrictions that we've had in lockdown, we could probably now more physically understand those changes that happen with us, the loss of strength. I mean, I'll be the first one to tell you that I've had a loss of strength because of sitting behind this computer way much longer, not having to move around as much. So now I've been actively conscious. It's been more actively conscious than anything else of actually trying to get more steps in during the day, purposely get more steps in during the day, because I've lost mobility, and I can see that in myself. And I'm a middle-aged man, but if that expands over a series of years, that's going to definitely lead to some kind of condition that will not be beneficial for me. And it requires me to be a little bit more attentive to what I'm eating, how frequently I'm eating, etc. Cool. So that's great that you've actually highlighted for us the importance of the course. Now, our students have actually also discovered the diseases and the illnesses that they've studied, and they've done their presentations. But now they're working on that lab report, and that's the main purpose of our call today. Discuss that lab report. Why a lab report? Why a lab report and not an essay?
Yeah. Cool. Thanks, Fran. Well, I think ultimately the lab report kind of ticks off a few boxes, right? It's a way of getting your transition into for one, if you wanted to go and study at level 6 or level 7 level after this diploma, then it gives you a kind of an idea what's around the corner and kind of prepares you for that research kind of mentality as well. We pride ourselves by basing ourselves on research to make sure that how do we know something's is achievable? How do we know something is a fact, rather than kind of just playing with words and kind of guessing, And so it's kind of a way of, one thing, giving you the students some exposure to research by creating a lab report. Second one, the learning outcome that's linked to this is to understand the guidelines and what the guidelines are, and in order to do that, we need to have a case study of some kind, and the case study being yourselves, the students, and what their physical activity is like in a week, what the nutrition is like in a week. And then now, once we've got that data on hand, we can compare that to the guidelines, and we can kind of make an assessment. Did we meet the guidelines? Did we not meet the guidelines? And why or why not? Like, what are some of the contributing factors? Because to be honest, when we look at the guidelines, I wonder how many students or how many people, and I ask this question to all my classes, like how many people actually knew the guidelines existed, for one, and where do they exist, how to access them, and are we aware of them or conscious of them? And ultimately, what's the purpose of them and who are they for? Okay, so I mean, these are some legit questions. And so through the lab report, we can highlight a problem, like, obesity is a huge factor in New Zealand. So we can do that through our intro. We can look at how are we going to gather the information, our data, and we do that through, by collecting the data, which is what, I'm understanding that the students have done now, collecting the data. We can translate that data by putting it into a results kind of table. We can now we can discuss what that means. So we can kind of tick off the learning outcomes through a series of things, and at the same time exposing you to like a really mini research project. To be fair, like even though the template follows the research project, then the marking in terms of whether you tick all the boxes for the lab report, it's a template. So I wouldn't get too concerned about whether you get the lab report right. It's more about the information that you provide.
And this is really important. I really like how you're stressing the getting comfortable and getting familiar with the guidelines. In class, what we've done is we've looked at guidelines that come out of Canada, the United States, the UK, and New Zealand, and how and why they might be slightly different. And one of the things that came up that was quite interesting is that the environmental factors can make those physical guidelines different. One of the things that we did actually do an activity with our students was looking at the physical activity guidelines that vary in New Zealand. In New Zealand, we've actually been quite specific with those toddlers, the early child care group. Then you have the youth. Then you have teenagers. Then you have us, and then you have the senior citizens. So you have 4 or 5 guidelines there in regards to physical activity. But what we highlighted then when we started looking at the nutritional guidelines is that, does this actually suit these guidelines? Do they fit the bill? For example, for those people, which are several of our students, that are athletes, or
Good
that
point.
or have a more I don't know, stricter training regime, and also eating regime because of their athletic background. And that's where sometimes the guideline data will be completely off the charts with what they're actually doing. And would that be something to be scared of, or something to be alerted from?
No, not at all, man. Not at all. Because guidelines are guidelines, right? Guidelines are really a template. Okay, and we really need to identify them as a template, as a guideline, because you're right. They're not suitable for every kind of athlete. Like what they are suitable for is general population. Okay, so if you look at nutrition as it stands, okay, so we've got micronutrients like your vitamins and minerals, and then we've got your macronutrients, okay, like the carbs, proteins, and fats. And then it doesn't matter which nutrient you're having, you can have a deficiency in one, right? So if you, for example, if you have a deficiency in calcium, you don't have enough calcium in your diet, then there's always a consequence. Okay, so it doesn't matter what nutrient you're having, there can there'll be a consequence to having a deficiency in certain things. Okay, over a period of time, it might not happen overnight. Won't happen over a week or a couple of weeks, but over a time, something happens. Like for example, a well-known deficiency in calcium. If we don't have enough dairy in our food, it can lead to weakening of the bones and brittle bones.
Yeah.
And osteoporosis later on in life,
Yeah,
because we have calcium in our diet. It strengthens our bones and kind of makes our bones nice and solid, and in our lifetime we can only accumulate so much of it, and the rest of it's just maintenance. So we have to have it, otherwise maintain it, otherwise your bones kind of get brittle from there. But anyway, so on one end we've got the deficiency, the other end of the scale we've got toxicity, right? So what toxicity is if you have too much of that. So what we know is that if you have too much calcium, for example, you can lead to like kidney stones, or lead to a couple of other things down the track as well. Okay, so so we can have toxicity, or deficiency or toxicity of well, anyway, what the guidelines are saying to do is that what do we need to consume in order to avoid this deficiency, and in order to avoid this. Okay, and that's what the guidelines are. So anywhere in between, you've got this massive playing room, right? You got this massive playing field. So if you don't hit the guidelines, kei te pai, it's all right. It's not the end of the world. But what if you have too much? All good, no problem. Okay, because what happens is that if you have too much, your body can absorb it. So your body will absorb it. So therefore, you can have heaps on one day and then nothing for the next couple of days, and still your body will still absorb. So I mean, if we look at the guidelines for what they are, then they're literally just guidelines. They're really just idea, and the whole idea of the guidelines is to avoid deficiency and avoid toxicity. Okay, and what do we have to do? And they literally go, what do we need to avoid deficiency? Well, what's halfway, which is called the estimated average requirement? What's 50% of deficiency and 50% between in toxicity, right? So they put a dot right in the middle, and then they go, cool, now let's give them a little bit more, boom, and that's how they come up with the RDI. The recommended dietary intake. So it's not rocket science, right? So if we look at it as a guideline, then that's all it is. It's just that let's try and what do we need to do to avoid this and then avoid that.
So let's go more now concrete to what students want to know. Let's attack the assignment. So for this assignment, the students need to have their nutrition diary, their dietary diary. They also have their physical activity diary, their log of what they've done over a period of time, either 3 to 5 days, what they've been doing. And that's the data that they collected. That's the data collection. That's the part of the lab report. That's part of the research that we call data collection. That's their data collection. That data collection comes from their own data. Perfect. And that
comes from their own data. If they choose, if they want to, all they really need is data. I mean, it's good feedback for themselves to find out where they're sitting. But to be honest, for the purpose of the assignment, they don't need to collect themselves. They can do it from someone else if they want to. It's up to. I think it's just easier sometimes in class to say do your own, then you don't have to wait for anyone to get back to you.
Exactly, and especially now in the conditions that we've been a bit more scattered through the remote learning under these conditions, it's probably the easiest way to go. Cool. So I've gathered my eating log, my nutrition log, my diary. I have my physical activity log. Sweet.
Cool.
Where do I go to now?
Let's move from there. Hey, I'm just going to share my screen, Fran, if you don't mind.
Do you want me to allow you to be a host?
Oh, I think I can share it. Can I?
Can you share?
Oh no, okay. No, I can't.
Unlucky.
So what I want to do first is go through the physical activity template. I think the nutrition template is pretty straightforward, but what I'll do, I'll just go through the physical activity template because that could be a little bit tricky. Especially, excuse me, I'll see if I can.
You can share now, and
Yep, cool. I'll just sorry, share my screen. Okay, sorry, here's my other homework. Oops, here's my other homework. Okay, here we go. We're getting onto this one. Okay, so here's our course, our Canvas page. Down the bottom here, you got assignment 2 supporting documents, so you'll be able to find everything in there. Inside, okay, so here's inside this template, you've got these few things here, right? Have you been using this, Fran, up till now?
Yeah. So with the students have access to this, and they've been looking at it. or we're hoping
so
that they've opened it.
let's go into this one here, eh? So let's go into this. Well, that's not the one. There's my homework for my
Today.
my TDL studies. Yeah. Okay. Here we go. Here we go. So let's go to. Oh man. Sorry. Oh man, I'm trying to drag this across. Okay, here we go. A little bit laggy. Cool. Okay, so we got this template here. Inside this box here, okay, you're gonna have to. You're gonna have to go to a couple of pages. Okay, we're just gonna get rid of this. Okay, because you can just fit it all on one box if you want to. Okay, so for example, okay, first thing you want to do is go. Okay, I'm running. You went for a run on day one. Okay, the intensity links back to your heart rate. Okay.
Yeah.
So how many beats per minute? Okay, now you've got a couple of things with this one. What we need to do here, hang on, I'm just going to duck back into this next page.
And that's where we talked with the students about the perceived exertion rate, to use it as a calculation, or to take your pulse.
Cool. So you've done that?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, so I don't have to go through that after all. Okay, so yeah, so you'd go into your perceived exertion rate. Okay, so the whole idea is that, ideally, what you would do, is you would do your training and work out how many beats per minute. Okay, and then you can find out the intensity. Okay, if you don't do that, then you can just go to the RPE, and then times it by 10, and then it becomes intensity. Okay, so let's say that you were training really intensely, so now you've got 170 beats per minute. Cool. Okay, duration. So when you do the duration, you put it into, ultimately it has to be into like a fraction, okay? Because it's going to help with the final equation at the end. So for example, if it's half an hour, it becomes 0.5. If it's 1 hour, it becomes 1. If it's 2 hours, it becomes 2. If it's 20 minutes, it's going to be 0.2.
So would it be the 20 minutes would be 0.3. 0.3.
Yes, you're right.
0.3.
You're right.
So this team, this is where our decimals come into play,
yes, you're right.
Because we're using the metric system of decimals to reflect the duration, when actually our hours are on the basis of 6. So an hour would be 1, but half an hour would be 0.5. Quarter an hour would be 0.25.
Yep.
Cool.
100%. Geez, your maths is a lot sharper than mine, I must admit. Okay, so the next thing we need to find out is the MET. Okay, because what we're going to find out now, we're going to find out how many calories you burn. Because if we go back to one of the guidelines, and this is the Surgeon General guidelines in America, and the reason I've chosen two very different guidelines is because one saying, we should kind of train as lifestyle, or make it into our lifestyle. The other one saying we should train more vigorously because there's more benefits to it. Anyway, so the Surgeon General guidelines has said that we should roughly burn how many calories. Okay, in order to find roughly how many calories we burnt out, we need to find what your metabolic equivalent is. Okay, so and what the metabolic equivalent is oh man, I keep going back to okay, here we go. Okay, so on the side here we've got METs. Okay, now what it's literally saying is that if I was cycling, okay, let's choose this one here, cycling, biking, less than 10 miles per hour, leisure walk, blah, 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 and then 4.0. So what that's literally saying is that I'm burning 4 times my amount of calories by doing that, 4 times my metabolism, sorry.
Yep.
So currently my metabolism is burning as we sit and breathe and sleep and whatever. If I was to cycle, my metabolism would be burning 4 times that amount. Okay, so and that's what that's saying. So probably the easiest way to find run, okay, is if you go Control F, it's run's already in here, and then you should be able to find run, walk, home activities. Let's go. Make sure we'll go through.
It's alphabetical order, so yeah, so you just go down to the bottom.
Yeah, you find it. Okay, so roughly where it is, I think it's something like 7 or something. Go back to this, but 7.0. put 7.0, okay. And if you go into your assignment, you'll be able to find out that if it's less than 3, it's light, moderate's between 3 and 6, and vigorous is 6 or greater, okay?
And
so
let's
then it becomes a
remind the
vigorous
student,
exercise.
and that is on the assignment paper. So on the assignment paper, you
Yes, yes, it
have
is.
there the classifications of the intensity.
Yep, cool. Okay, so now we go calories. Okay, we're going to work out this equation. So met take away 1. So we're literally taking off the metabolism. Okay, so we're looking at just the activity. That's why the -1 is there, because 1 is for your metabolism. Okay, so we go, which will be what, 6. Actually, let's just put out the brackets. 6 times, okay, let's say 75 kgs times duration 0.5. Equals, and then whatever that comes to is how many calories you ought to burn. Okay.
Let's go back here so we can explain to the students, where does that 6 come from?
Oh, 6, sorry. Yes, the 6 is from the equation, the met take away 1. So it's met is this one, 7, take away 1.
1.
So as I was saying,
6.
the 1 being your metabolism.
Perfect.
Okay, so we're going to 7 take away 1 is 6 times your body weight times the duration of the exercise. So what we're literally finding out is that from this exercise, and I'm not good enough to just work it out in my head, like Fran is.
I'll open up the calculator here and I'll do it for you.
Thanks.
6 times 75, that'd be 150, 300, 450 times 0.5. It would be 225.
225. Brilliant. Okay,
and I did that. Hold on, I did that in my head. So let's see how remarkable my mathematical head is at the moment. And exactly wrong. It was,
you had serious?
It's 900.
Oh man,
yeah, it was 900. Hold on.
900 is a big difference from 225.
Yeah, because I did 450 times 0.5. Okay, so it was 450.
So is that 900 times 0.5? So 450
times 0.5. No, 225. I was right. I just pressed the wrong button. 225. 225. I was right. My head is better than the calculator. Trust my head. Trust.
Cool. Okay, cool.
Team, you trust
Brilliant.
your mathematical skills, not the calculator. The calculator sometimes is wrong.
So good. That's why you get paid the big bucks, dude. Okay, cool. So that's how you work out this template. Okay, and the reason we need this is because like some of this information is we're going to need to be able to compare with the guidelines. Hey team, what I've done, I've created a template for you all too. I'm not too sure if you're too familiar with this template, but if you go down to the bottom, it's got lab report format. Flick on there and open it up. And as I was saying, my laptop's just a little bit laggy right now, so hopefully it'll pop up.
But this is great that we're going to see it. This is great that we're going to see it because this is exactly what we're going to work in our practical class in terms of actually starting to put together the lab report. So it's great that we're going to be able to talk about this this template, because this is exactly what we're going to be using as we put together the lab report in our tutorial class.
Cool. Hey, what I do with my classes too, I literally highlight this area here in red, because what the red is the guidelines. Okay, you keep everything that's in black, you delete what's in red by the time you're ready to submit this. Okay, so and this is okay, so and it's just going to separate from what can I leave in, because the reason I created a template for the students is because, one, I know you're not familiar with how to write a lab report, so I'm not assuming that you do. What now? Okay, so yeah, so and two, it's just kind of easy way of kind of guiding you into how to complete this, and hopefully it helps. Okay, so I don't expect you to go through and sort out. Yeah, so you do that, make sure you go through and do that in red, and then you can kind of come back to this. Okay, so what the whole idea of the template is that it's going to guide you, hopefully. Literally, if you decide that the title is going to be the comparison of physical activity and nutrition guidelines for a sports student, then all good. Don't worry, you can change it if you want to, you can reform it however you want to, just turn it black. Okay, and then it's ready to go. Move on to the next one. The abstract, what the abstract is something you do last. Okay, even though it's the first thing in the assignment, it's literally a sentence from each part of the assignment. And it kind of says, what's the problem? How did you get your information? What the results say? What are some of the discussion findings and stuff like that? The introduction generally.
Let me just go back to the abstract.
Sure.
Let's relate the abstract a little bit back to what we were doing with academic writing earlier in the year, when we talk about writing your introduction last. So you can actually make it a powerful introduction with regards to what you actually put down as ideas. So whenever you're writing an essay, and you're actually writing, going back and doing your introduction at the end, so you can make it a powerful, exciting introduction to what you wrote. This is a little bit what we're doing with the abstract.
Yep.
Cool.
Yep. Yeah, and then of course the introduction, don't make it too long. Okay, the introduction should be about 250, 300 words. Okay, I mean, I don't know if that's long for some people, but it's really all you're really doing is identifying a problem. Okay, and you can choose one. Just choose one, guys. Like there's heaps of problems in health. You can talk about the mental, because we're talking about whole water. We're talking about someone's holistic being, right? We're talking about you can talk about mental well-being of New Zealanders. You can talk about the obesity rate in New Zealand. You can talk about health and lifestyle, and you can talk about whatever. Just a few sentences that kind of supports that, and then should be your first paragraph. Okay, because what your first paragraph will ideally be will be like what's happening.
Yeah.
Okay, just contextualize the issue. The next paragraph is generally like what's the problem. Okay, so and it could be like, okay, I'll just rattle some. Okay, so it could be like obesity is the third biggest epidemic in, New Zealand is the third biggest obese country in the world. This is linked to physical activity and nutrition problems, blah, 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 blah. And then the next paragraph will come to something like, in order to help us understand how we can work on our well-being, guidelines have been established for this, blah, blah, blah. So what we're trying to do, we're trying to highlight a problem, and then we're trying to contextualize the problem. Okay, because your assignment, just don't forget, your assignment is all about is about the guidelines, okay, and understanding the guidelines and how that kind of works. And that's what we're trying to get to the bottom of.
But now I'm going to be a little bit the student advocate here.
Sure.
But before I actually sat down to do this lab report, I was picking up information around my physical activity and my nutrition. Shouldn't my introduction be about that information?
Yeah, of course. As I was saying, you can gear it towards wherever you want to go, right? So you can talk about you can talk about health and well-being in New Zealand, because ultimately we're looking at whole water well-being, and then link it to physical activity and nutrition, and then go from there. The introduction should really highlight and contextualize the issue. Okay, and that's kind of what I'd look for in an assignment. And how I kind of try and get students to space it out. What's the problem? What's the context? And the context around food, nutrition, physical activity. What's some of the problems? And then last paragraph is generally like, in this lab report, this is what I'm aiming to do. I'm aiming to look at someone's physical one person's physical activity and nutrition, and then comparing it with the guidelines to see if they meet the guidelines. And then that's literally.
Would it be okay if the student says in this part, and the objective of this lab report is to look at my physical activity and nutrition in comparison to the guidelines? Would it be okay for them to say to look at mine?
No. And the reason we don't, Fran, is because as a research, and we're trying to put it into this research term, the researcher has to be separate from the researchee, okay? Like from the researched. And we do that by referring to your participant, or the person that you're doing the research on, as a subject or participant through the study. Okay, because as a researcher, if I was to say, this is my my physical activity and my nutrition, then what happens as a researcher, you're completely biased in your opinions, completely biased in your views. There's no legitimacy in terms of the credibility. And although in context, and we're doing this with you, we're trying to separate the researcher from the research, if that makes sense, hopefully.
So this is what we want to highlight, team.
Yes.
That what we want to highlight is that this is a practice lab report in preparation to your further studies of sports science. So though the data that you've collected may have come from your own physical activity or nutrition over a period of 3 days to a week, the way that we write this, it's a writing exercise that we're doing of this lab report, and we want to refer to ourselves as the individual or the subject or the participant. So don't refer to yourself in first person. You're going to say, and the purpose of this this lab report is to look at the at how a middle-aged individual or an individual in the range between 20 and 25 years old complies to the general guidelines for nutrition and physical activity. And that's how you can refer to the data that you're going to be picking up and staying with the writing format that is required in a lab report.
Yep. And it, like, if you go through the assignment and just write it in the other, like, first person, then it's ultimately it's an easy fix. You just have to go back and kind of rechange things just to rechange the context of it. Yeah. Cool. So that would be, so introduction. Okay, so the method section is actually quite a straightforward one, because I've given it to you. So if you go back to the assignment question,
where was that, Des?
Yeah,
this
cool.
year we're playing hide and go
if you
seek
go
here.
into
Where did you give me the methods section?
I will give you. Okay, so I should have. If you go back to the assignment, yeah. Once again, sorry for the slow laptop. I think Fran took the good one and left me with the cruddy one.
I heard that we're going to be getting new laptops
No,
next year.
really?
New Macs next year.
Are you serious?
I hope so.
That'd be cool. Okay. So if you go back to the assignment page, okay. So yeah, man.
When was the last time you turned off your computer, Des?
I turned it off a while ago, actually, because it started lagging then. And I've been taking heaps of photos, so okay, here we go. So here's the assignment. So lab report. Okay, so if you go through here and you scroll through the method, so the whole idea of the method is really just to say, what did you do to collect your data? Okay, that's the whole purpose of the method, is what did you do to collect your data? If I was a researcher and I wanted to replicate your research like to the T, then I need to read your research and go, oh, cool, I'm going to do exactly the same. Because if I did the same thing with a student from social work and I compared it with a student from the School of Sport, then I'm comparing two research projects going, wow, School of Sport student is well more physically capable but poor in nutrition, whereas the social work student might be the other way around. And then I can come up to some conclusions. Or I can just say, if I were to do this compared to this, then at least I'd be comparing apples with apples. Or I might even do the same thing in the same class. Okay, so the whole idea of the method section is to really just to tell me what did you do to get your data. Okay, now I've given it to you. Only thing is, Fran doesn't want to read this whole thing in your assignment, right? So what you're gonna have to do, you're gonna have to put it into your own words. Okay, and it'll sound something like this. One participant from the School of Sport at MIT, Manukau Institute of Technology, 30 years of age, was, you can even go further and go Polynesian background, or Polynesian, Māori, whatever, was asked to recall all physical activity performed over 1 week. This included sport, formal exercise, play, leisure, occupational physical activity. He or she was also asked to ensure that all physical activities listed become a physical activity. Do not blah, blah, blah. Well, actually, you don't even need that last part. You can say also with each physical activity performed, he needed to record the duration, and then keep going. Just keep going. Put it into your own words.
Sweet.
Does that make sense?
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. So I'm not expecting, if this was a real research whānau, then you'd have to create this yourself. Okay. But I'm not, once again, I'm not expecting that this is, this lab to perform. I'm not expecting people to know this stuff though. So just recreate it in your own words.
Because the idea here is for us to get
Yes.
used to writing to this format. So the best
Yes.
way to get used to writing to this format is by following this format and understanding why we have each one of these parts.
Yep.
And the method, like Daryl has explained, the method part is important. So if I'm another researcher, I can come and actually read your method and try to replicate the research that you've done.
Yes. Yes. Cool. Okay. Just replicate. Just tell me what you've done to a T. It may be a little bit lengthy. Don't worry about that. Just keep going. Make sure you just cover all the bases, and then you get full marks for that. Okay, it's pretty easy to nail that one.
I'll
The
tell you.
results section.
Sorry. I'm going to tell you, team. The methods part for me, because I try to rush, and I go, well, that's understandable. I usually rush the methods part, and it always requires a bit more work. So yeah, now that you're writing your first lab report, pay attention to that methods part because you do need to actually make it in detail. All right, that's part that you want to rush. So it's great that we're following a template.
Cool. Okay, so the results section. Okay, now what we've done here, now we've got your physical activity data. Okay, so let's have a look at that again one more time. I'm just going to open this one up again, wherever that might be, inside this mess of my desktop. I'm sorry for this,
I
man.
think it's this one right here. The down
there
now.
we go.
Here we go.
Right. Okay, so what this is. Okay, so what we can do now, we can start comparing what we have in our data with this information here. Okay, so for example, what you need to do with your physical activity. The first criteria, which is the Surgeon General guidelines, suggests that we should train moderately for 30 minutes a day, vigorously for 20 minutes a day, or a combination of these. Okay. Now, what you do with your physical activity, go through here and decide how many days were vigorous, how many days were moderate, and did you meet the guideline? Okay, so and your actual quantity might be only two moderate per week. Okay, so did you meet the guidelines? Yes or no? Well, in this case, no.
And where will I be keeping my data?
Oh, your
There.
data
Yeah.
in the assignment, you mean?
Yeah, exactly. Where am I going to put my data in
Yeah,
the
okay.
assignment?
So your data, all the raw data that you'll collect will come all the way down to the back and pop under here. Okay. It's called it's an area called appendix, and what this says is you include your training diaries and paperwork in appendix. Okay, so yeah, you need to attach it inside there. Okay, ultimately when you
So basically, your appendix 1 will be your food diary. Your appendices
yes
2 will be your physical activity log. So you'll have all what these tables that Daryl has there for you. You will be attaching them to the appendices on your assignment.
yep, that's right. Cool. Okay, so when you come to this next one, calories expended per day, go through here, and the guidelines suggest at least 150 calories a day or 1,000 calories a week. So you'd come through here, add up the calories you've had for the week. Did you achieve it? Yeah, 2,000 calories for the week. Did you achieve it? Yes, I achieved that one. Ultimately, did you achieve the guidelines? No, because you didn't achieve that first one, right?
Cool.
Okay, and then you move on to the next one. And some of you who are obviously the main thing is that, yeah, I mean the guidelines for the ACCM are a little different. They're a little bit more specific, have an exercise approach. and they're saying 3 to 5 days a week. Did you achieve it? Yes or no? What are the actual quantities? And then ultimately, did you achieve them or not? To be honest, it doesn't matter, team, whether you achieve them or not. Okay, so you don't have to fudge your results. You don't have to manipulate them for anything, because we're not hugely concerned about that you've met the guidelines. Okay, all we're really concerned about is how you're reporting these guidelines.
Exactly.
Okay, sorry, whether you're reporting them and how you've met them by reporting them. Okay, so yeah, so did you meet them or not? Yes, no. Okay, if you didn't train, then you didn't train, right? So you just go, okay, well, no, I didn't meet the guidelines. Okay, and then yeah, and then the same with nutrition. Once you have to do food diary, go through, work out how many servings of fruit and veggies you've had over that week, divide that number by 7, which is going to give you your average. Okay, so
Right.
your actual quantity might even come to something like 2.5. It might be a fraction. Did you meet the guidelines? Well, it says I should have 5. Did you meet the guidelines? No, I didn't.
Cool.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, does that make sense so far, Fran?
Absolutely. It makes sense to me. So
Okay.
once we're in class and we're doing the tutorial of the writing the report, we'll see how many of you actually have listened to this whole recording and what understanding you've gotten from it.
Cool. And in the end, your discussion was is really, what does this mean? Okay, if you met the guidelines, sweet. Why? What might have contributed to that? If you didn't meet the guidelines, sweet. What might have contributed to that? Just remember with the discussion, if you go back to the assignment question, there's a whole lot of questions in there for you to answer. Okay, so go back there. You
And
can't go wrong.
we've discussed this in class, team, around what is the discussion and what are the it's what are the questions that you're being asked? Where is these results leading to? That's the discussion that you want to have. You go back to your assignment questions, and that'll give you the guidelines into what you're writing to each one of those paragraphs around your discussion.
Yep. Cool. All good, but hey,
cool.
Does that make sense?
That makes absolute sense. And the referencing, well, we've talked about that all, team, and the referencing comes directly from the guidelines that you're getting from the Surgeon General, from the New Zealand health and nutrition guidelines. So that's where you're getting the guidelines. That's where your references are at. Hopefully, this conversation with Des, going over the template of how to write a lab report and the importance of the lab report, what skills it's going to be developing, is going to help you towards this assignment number 3. We'll talk about it further in class, but hopefully you've enjoyed this this podcast, and it's actually given you a little bit of a heads up into our assignment 3 writing. Daz, thank you very much, like always.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Look forward to doing another one of these on another subject.
Cool. Good luck, everyone. Okay.
Take care.
Bye.